My name is Constance, and this is Cruelty Free Musings. Welcome to my channel and to a real background look I decorated. It's not just for you, but I mean, I did definitely look at the blank wall that was in my last video and was like, seems not ideal. So, today we are going to be doing a video idea that I have shamelessly stolen from Hannah of Smokey Glow, and that is knit with me. Knit with me while I tell stories. Hooray! But unlike Hannah, everyone has to put their own personal spin on their video ideas. Unlike Hannah, I have not lived an interesting life. I have had very few misadventures in my life. So but I knit. And I really enjoy watching those videos where she has kind of a story time. So I was like, what stories do I like to tell? I know. I will tell a fairy tale. So here we go. Episode 1. Knit with me while I tell you a fairy tale. Um, Today, episode 1 is going to be Rapunzel for all of the people who have only ever experienced the Rapunzel story through Tangled. So, let us begin, as all fairy tales do, with Once Upon a Time. There was a couple. They were a poor peasant couple who lived in a little village town. And they were expecting their first child. Isn't that lovely? The circle of life. So they were expecting their first child, and it was the middle of winter. And it was a very dark and very cold winter. And in their village, their little unremarkable village, there lived an enchantress. I mean, it had to be an enchantress, I guess, because who else is going to have a garden which is filled with rampantly growing spring vegetables in the middle of winter? So, the wife, the little village wife, as pregnant women invariably do, had a craving. And this craving was particularly difficult for her because her husband loved her very much and would have done anything for her, and she thought that doing this particular thing for her would not be a great idea. So she was trying to protect her husband from himself by keeping this little tidbit of what she was particularly wanting with her pregnant body's desires for food. And that was rampion. Now, what is rampion, you may ask? And with good reason, who has heard of rampion? Well, it is also called Rapunzel, and it is a leafy green, and you can make apparently a delicious salad out of it. Because she kept staring out of her window at the luscious rampion in the enchantress's garden, and she kept telling herself, don't tell sweet husband about this. He'll go and get us both into trouble over this vegetable, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. But, he will. And it's sweet. It's the thought that counts, right? That is But in this situation, the thought is better left unexpressed. So she was struggling with herself, but eventually her husband caught her staring out the window into the enchantress's garden at specifically the rampion. And the little light bulb went on over his head. It was like, ah, this is why she is grumpy and grouchy. It's because she wants something, but she feels like she can't ask for it. Because what is going to happen to us if we get caught trespassing in this beautiful garden that is obviously born of magic? He didn't do all of this thinking because he was just he was a simple peasant dude who was really in love with his wife and who really wanted to give her anything that she wanted, especially since she was expecting. And he saw her looking at the rampion and he thought, okay, I will get her the rampion. And so, in the middle of the night, that night, he climbed over the wall and he hastily grabbed a handful of the rampion and he stealthily climbed back over the wall. And in the morning, he surprised his wife with a beautiful bunch of rampion and nothing bad happened at all. And she made herself a delicious salad with the rampion, and it only made things worse. It only made her want rampion even more. And she was like, this is dumb. This is dumb. You shouldn't get me more, but it's the only thing that I want to eat. That's the desire for the forbidden, right? So he sees her pining away and not really able to eat anything, and devastated by this taste of magical rampion, literally magical rampion, which she didn't know that she had ever missed in her life. And he's determined. He's like, no, this is the only thing that she can eat right now. We can't have her wasting away. That we can't have her die. Right? This is just the beginning of the story. She can't die yet. So he's like, okay, tonight I'm going to climb back over the wall and I'm going to get her more rampion and that'll fix it. That'll be the end. All right? It's the last time. It's the last time that I will ever do anything like this again. So, that night, he climbed over the wall into the enchantress's garden, and he hastily snatched up the handful of rampion, and then he was smacked by a sorceress's staff as she stood before him, and she was like, hey, thief, what are you doing? Why are you in my garden? Why are you stealing my lettuce? What are you doing? So he stuttered out the whole story. He was like, my wife is pregnant and she has these cravings. You know how pregnant women are, and she the only thing she wants to eat is rampion, and you can't get it anywhere. But there's this beautiful rampion, and look, we live right there. That's her window. She can see the rampion from the bedroom, and it's just making her sick and fade away with desire for this rampion. And the enchantress kind of looked at him, was like, this? All right. I'll accept that this is your reason for being here. But at the same time, you were trespassing. You are currently trespassing. And you have in your hand something which was stolen from me. This is clearly not how things should be working at all in any way. So, what punishment shall I extract from you? What price for this rampion? I think you're a poor man, right? A peasant? Yeah, you barely live. I will do you a favor. I will take this mouth off of your hands. I will feed and raise your child in exchange for this mouthful of rampion that you have stolen from me. Does that seem like a fair price? And no, it didn't. This is his first child, after all, and how is he going to ever regain this lost experience? But at the same time, he doesn't, he hasn't met this child yet, so he doesn't know how he could possibly love it more than he loves his own wife. And so he says, yes, we'll do it. We'll give you the child. And I'm sure that conversation with his wife was very difficult. And trust me, it's not detailed in any of the fairy tales. Because I'm sure that there was a lot of NSFW language involved. So, now, the baby is born. It's a girl. It's a beautiful baby girl. And the enchantress shows up as soon as she's born and takes her away from her parents, who presumably are devastated. But you don't know, because you don't hear about that for the rest of the fairy tale. It's all about the enchantress and her daughter, who she names Rapunzel, after the plant that was the reason that she acquired a daughter in the first place. So, Rapunzel grows and becomes even more beautiful, and the enchantress, for reasons, decides to lock her into a tower. A tower which is perfectly straight up and down, has no door at the base, no staircase. You can't get into it at the base at all. It just has a window up near the top, up where Rapunzel lives. And in order to climb up to the tower, you have to call to Rapunzel, and she will hook her braids onto a hook that's by the door and throw down her braid and allow you to climb up her hair, because it is very long, and also that sounds like it would really hurt. I don't know, so she stronger woman than I. But regardless, she has really long hair. It has never been cut, and that is the point of access for getting into the tower. You call up to her, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. And she's like, okay. You secure it around the hook twice. A lot of these details that I'm mentioning are not actually in the fairy tale. This one is. You wrap the braid around the hook twice. Very important. You have to make sure it's secure. And then you throw it out, and then you pull up the person who has called to you, Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. All right. So, the enchantress does not live with Rapunzel. She has a normal life somewhere else in the forest. But she keeps Rapunzel in this tower, and she comes and visits her, regularly. A couple of times every week. Well, Rapunzel is a maiden at this point. She has grown to be of marriageable age, 15 or 16. And she is entertaining herself in the tower, and one of the ways that she entertains herself when Mother Gretel is not around, that's her name, or her title in the fairy tale, Mother Gretel, one of the ways that she entertains herself is through singing. So, the prince of the kingdom hears her singing and is utterly enchanted. And he finds her tower through listening to her voice, and he goes entirely around to the base of it, looking for a way to get in, and he can't find any way to get in. And then, but he can't let it go. He's like, no, this singing is too beautiful, and surely the voice is just as beautiful as the face, and it's time for me to get married anyway, and, what else is a prince going to do with his life? So, he comes back to the tower every day in hopes that one day he will discover the secret of entering the tower with the maiden with the beautiful voice. And it doesn't take very long, because after all, Mother Gretel comes a couple of times every week, so eventually their paths cross, and he pretends that he is doing something else and not at all interested in the tower, and she goes to the tower and yells, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!" And so Rapunzel does the thing. She winds the braid around the hook and throws it out the window, and she pulls up the enchantress, Mother Gretel. And so the prince says to himself, aha, that's how you do it. That's the secret. Oh, he has figured out how to get into the tower. So he kind of hides out and waits to make sure that the enchantress really leaves. And then, the next day, he goes to the bottom of the tower and he calls up, attempting to imitate the enchantress's voice as closely as possible, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!" And she suspects nothing, somehow, and very trustingly does the thing with her hair and throws it down. And then he gets to the top and she discovers that it's not Mother Gretel, and there is a confrontation which probably does not involve a frying pan, but does eventually involve a promise of marriage, and incidentally results in twins, so I'll let you decide how that actually went. So yes, young men, young woman, get together in an isolated place. Predictable results. And so they have been catapulted into this remarkable level of intimacy. Certainly Rapunzel has never been around any young man of her age, and the prince has probably never been around a princess of similar age to him for any length of time. And so after they figure out what to do about that being alone, they're like, wait, how do I actually spend more time with you? Because, you can't live here. And I can't get down because my hair is the way that I get down. That's not how That's not how hair works. Like, if it's attached up here, then the person that it's attached to can't very well climb down it. So, like, we have a problem where Rapunzel is kind of chained to the top of the tower. And then she has an idea. I know. Bring me a little bit of silk every day when you come, and I'll weave it into a ladder, and that's how I'll get down. We'll secure it to the hook. You'll climb down my braids as usual, and I'll climb down the silk ladder after I've, pulled my braids back up. Well, things are going swimmingly. And the prince is diligently bringing silk every time that he comes to visit. And Rapunzel is weaving them into a silk ladder for her means of escape. And then one day, Rapunzel, who apparently takes after her father in some ways, remarks to Mother Gretel, "My, how is it that you are so much heavier than the prince? Because it seems like when I'm pulling him up, he's with me in a moment. But I feel every moment of your weight as you're climbing the tower." And Mother Gretel is like, "Wicked girl, I locked you away precisely to avoid this moment. Out. Out of my house. I never want to see you again. You consorted with a boy, and you got yourself pregnant. Go. Out. Be gone." I don't know exactly how it goes, but at the end of the conversation, Rapunzel is not only outside the tower, but she has found her way to a desert where she gives birth and she lives with her children in misery. She has twins, I mentioned that, a boy and a girl. So she is living in this desert in misery and poverty and sadness and tears. The enchantress who has loved her and taken care of her and sheltered her, I don't know about loved her, but has sheltered her and taken care of her and gone on seeing her consistently for her entire life up to this point, has thrown her out of the house for the sin of not being a pure maiden anymore. And she has no means of supporting herself, so she just tries to garden in this little hard area of the world. So, in the meantime, the enchantress is still at the top of the tower, and she cut off Rapunzel's braids. This is an important part of the story. Before she threw Rapunzel out, she cut off Rapunzel's braid. So, she is hanging out in the top of the tower, waiting for dear old Prince to come back with another skein of silk. And when aforesaid Prince comes back, he yells up to the top, "Rapunzel! Rapunzel! Let down your hair!" And sure enough, the braids come flying out the window and gracefully arc down to the ground, as he has seen them do many times at this point. And he climbs gleefully, gladly to the top of the tower, only to find at the top not his love, not Rapunzel, but the enchantress who has been keeping her prisoner. And the enchantress throws him out of the tower into a bed of thorns, and his eyes are gouged out. It's very dramatic, and bloody. You can tell it's a tale for the little people by the amount of gore. So, fairy tales really, really deal with the nasty part of human nature. Very much so. You have to dig a little bit to kind of get to it, but once you get to it, you're like, oh, yeah, no, people are just like that. Wow. Still. Still to this day. Still to this day, husbands are a little dumb when their wives are pregnant. Still to this day, young people fall in love and do dumb things and occasionally promise marriage as a result of being a little too close. Uh, and still to this day, parents feel betrayed by how fast their children grow up. And admittedly, most of them don't throw their children out of the house, but it's not unheard of. It's not unheard of to discover that your kids have grown up and then throw them out of the house because they've shown a little more maturity in a way that you didn't want them to yet. Or not maturity by being irresponsible in a way that you didn't teach them to rein in. For example, like trying to lock your children away from temptation, it turns out does not work super well. So maybe instead of trying to lock your children away from temptation, you should tell them about temptation and be like, hey, you'll encounter this. Everyone does. And then both of you will be better prepared at the end of that conversation for when it eventually happens. So anyway, we had gotten to the point of the prince being thrown out of the tower and landing in a bed of thorns and gouging out his eyes. Because this is the sort of thing that just happens in fairy tales. There are convenient beds of thorns at the base of every tower, apparently. And any prince being thrown out of any given tower is going to land completely unharmed, except for his eyes, which are going to be gouged out specifically by the thorns, not by any specific ill intent of the person throwing him out of the tower. Always, incidentally, female. It's an interesting thing to look into. Women reject men. Typically, this is the threat to masculinity is rejection by women, and especially by the cruel mother of the desired one. So, back to the story. Prince, eyes gouged out, completely helpless, can't navigate back to his palace. Somehow there's no hue and cry for him. I guess he has brothers that are going to become heirs. So, not a big deal when he goes missing, I guess. And so, he just ends up wandering the earth for... The amount of time varies. It depends on the specific version of the story that you're reading, how long he wanders the earth. I like the version where he wanders for a year and a day. That was codified by Hans Christian Andersen, who was Danish, I think. Scandinavian of some kind. He collected a bunch of these fairy tales, and one of the themes that he noticed and he really codified, and it's significant in his version of all of the stories that he wrote down, is this theme of all of the trials last for a year and a day. So he wanders the earth for a year and a day until he finds a desert. Gosh, where else have we heard about a desert? Well, it turns out that this is where Rapunzel is, and she is very sad. She instantly recognizes him, somehow. Magic. Don't question it. It's a fairy tale. So she instantly recognizes him, and she is so sad. And she runs over to him, and she does her best to patch him up, and she weeps all over him, and he's like, Rapunzel, I missed you so much. And her tears fall on his eyes and magically heal them, because being sad, female energy, I don't know. There is symbology in here somewhere about, and it's like really deep and meaningful, but the surface level of this story is she cries on his eyes and they're healed. His sight is restored. Wow. And with sight, this is some symbology that I actually have at my fingertips. With his sight, his resources are restored to him. He is able to make his way in the world completely fine as soon as his vision is restored. As soon as you can see what you're actually looking at, as soon as you can see what the problem is, you know where to go next. So his sight is restored, and he says, "Come, Rapunzel, my darling children, and we will go back to my kingdom, and we will establish a life together." And he goes back. He leads them without problem. Nothing interferes with them at all. They never encounter the enchantress again. She apparently has no interest in them, even though she's lived in the same, even though she is living in the same kingdom, presumably still, where they are both headed. She is not interested at all, in any way, in them. Gives them no problems. They go back. There is, I don't know actually if there's a party. I don't know if the prince was celebrated. He went missing with no fanfare whatsoever. So I don't know if there was a big deal about him coming back. I have not been doing a good job of actually knitting while I talk. I knew that this would happen. I talk with my hands. So, he went missing with no fanfare whatsoever. Was not missed at all. But, I don't know. Maybe there was a celebration when he came back. Maybe he just was like, yeah, we'll live in the woods together. And they lived in the kingdom, and they established a happily ever after life, which is code, that's fairy tale code for they lived a normal life after that. It wasn't super happy all the time, but that's the end of the story. That's the end of the interesting and symbolic, symbol-laden bit. Alright, so that is the story of Rapunzel. If you're wondering, this is a sock. It's specifically a toe of a sock. It has been my purse knitting, and it has been neglected, so I figured that this would be a good time to pull it out. So, all of that said, I hope you enjoyed, or learned something, or both. Like, comment, subscribe, do whatever you feel like. Thanks for watching, and goodbye for now.